Hey guys, it's Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship. At our most recent Blackjack Boot Camp, we were incredibly fortunate to have Andy Block come and be a guest speaker at the boot camp. For those who don't know Andy Block, he was on one of the famous MIT teams known as the Amphibians that was featured in the book Busting in Vegas. He has multiple engineering degrees and a law degree. He's been a professional poker player, has won multiple World Series of Poker bracelets, and is an all-around good guy. So this is our interview with him at our most recent boot camp. Hope you guys enjoy.
Thank you, guys. I just want to say first, it's great to be here and to see so many people still interested in playing the game and beating the casinos, and it's great. Just like Tommy said, like we're all one of the reasons we do this because we like to take money from the casinos, the bad guys.
Yes.
So
awesome. Well, why don't you tell us just how you got into Advantage Play?
Yeah, I was always into playing games, and when I went to MIT, there was always this rumor that there was an MIT blackjack team, and at one point, I remember there was a story in the local school newspaper that like a janitor had found a bag of like $100,000 in cash in the classroom. And there was all these theories about what it was, and some people thought like maybe it's like some drug deal or whatever. And years later, I learned that it was one of the leaders of the MIT blackjack team at the time had just left a backpack with $100,000 cash into it after a blackjack training session in one of the classrooms. But I didn't get involved with the blackjack team until a couple years later on. I was I got like fired from my job, and I was looking for new things to do, and I took up poker, and then I started playing a lot of poker and started going to Foxwoods Casino when it was fairly new in Connecticut. And they had this game there that was invented by one of the people at Foxwoods, one of the vice presidents. It was called Hickok 6-Card Poker, and it looked interesting, and I went home and I wrote some computer program and another computer program to analyze it. Figured out we had a 6% advantage as the player. The only problem was it was a $50 maximum bet, and it was really slow, so you couldn't earn too much. But I thought, like, hey, maybe I could find the MIT blackjack team, and we could play this. We could actually have a team of students go down there and beat the game. And I ended up, the MIT blackjack team actually found me. One of the guys, one of the leaders, actually the guy that had left the cash in the classroom, he started to play poker, and he wanted to start an MIT poker team. And I had just won a small tournament at Foxwoods. And he approached me to help him join that team. And I said, hey, I got this game that we can also do. And I showed him all my work, my simulations and stuff. And then he had another friend of his, Semyon Dukac, who he wrote the second book that Ben Mezrich wrote about blackjack was about mostly focused on Semyon and our half of the blackjack team. They said, hey, okay, let's do that. We'll do poker, and we can do the Hickox poker. We did that for like 6 months. Then they realized like we were beating them and changed the rules, and it wasn't beatable anymore. But then they just recruited me and several of the other people onto the blackjack team. And that was like in the early 90s. And so, I eventually, I had a job, I got a new job, and but eventually it didn't make any sense for me to like keep going to my job. Like I would fly to Vegas, kind of like in the movie 21. We'd fly to Vegas, we'd take the red eye back. I'd wake up in the, on the airplane, like a couple times. I think I had to be woken up by the flight attendant. I think I actually woke myself up. But anyway, I would like wake up, drive to work, and then go to work, or go to work late, or I'd spend the first couple of hours at work instead of like doing the programming I was supposed to do. I would like write poker and blackjack simulations on my computer. And I had like a poker analysis website, and then this was like in the mid 93 or 94, before like Amazon was around, or right around when Amazon started, I think. So eventually, it didn't make any sense, so I quit my job and started playing blackjack and poker full time. And it worked out pretty well for a few years, and then I got a little bored, and I thought, like, maybe I should do something else. So I applied to law school, and I somehow got into Harvard, and so I didn't know if I wanted to go. And a friend of mine said, hey, "You got into Harvard, you have to go." So I went. I used my blackjack earnings to pay for law school, and then when I graduated, instead of getting a law degree, I went back to playing poker and blackjack. And
I need an MD.
yeah, so I did take the bar, but only because I won the bar review exam in a charity auction. So. And so I am still licensed. I'm actually an attorney, but I've only ever represented myself. I have a little bit better record than Tommy Highland. I'm 5-0 representing myself instead of 10-1 or something. Yeah, but I was only arrested 4 times playing blackjack in 3 different countries and an Indian reservation. So quite a variety of different situations. The poker boom took off, so I just kept playing poker, and the blackjack, it was, especially once I got well known as a poker player, it was harder for me to play without getting recognized. So I haven't really been playing a lot of blackjack lately, mostly poker and starting a family and etc. So
So-
it's great to be here, and
Yeah. I was thinking, when you would get bored being a professional gambler traveling the world, it's like, well, I need a good story, so I'll go to law school. I can, tell people about that time I went to law school rather than like that time I was a professional gambler.
yeah, kind of like that.
So tell people about your training with the MIT team.
Yeah, like what we went through, how we trained the players.
Yeah,
tested
I
everybody out.
think most people have, either read a book or
Yeah.
seen a movie, and it's like people are throwing water at them, and
I think the movie 21 kind of captured a little bit of what it felt like at our training sessions. We didn't go to like an underground casino to test our players. We kind of simulated it in a setting kind of like this, and we would deal to have somebody deal to the players, and we try to distract them, try to trip them up. We had checkout procedures that were fairly strict. Like you had so many counting errors that you could make. Within like 5 shoes, you could have maybe 3 errors. So many different betting errors. Like if you're off by 1 unit, then that was a betting error. If you made a basic strategy error, immediate failure. If you got cheated, depending, like if the dealer took your winnings, and if there was a push but the dealer took your money and you didn't catch that, that was an automatic failure. Mm-hmm. So we had times when people would, they get down to the last shoe and the dealer would do something tricky and take their money, and they would lose, and they would almost like go home crying almost. Not quite as bad, but you could try again next week. So pretty much people did, and we were compared to some other teams, I think we're in many ways kind of anal about our checkouts and our training and our trip reports. We had a pretty strict way of reporting. You had to write down every single shoe you played, and how many people were at the table, what the count was when we sat down. We did mostly big player games, Gorilla or regular BPs. Assuming those terms all mean. We did a few other things, but that was what we did 90% of the time probably. So you have to go in and you have to keep track of everything. So usually like the big player, it was their job usually to like every time they got called in to remember, and then they take a break, go to the bathroom, write down the notes. Okay, well the count was 12. There were 3 other people. One of them left, and when the count went up to 16, that was great. The dealer, the penetration was 5 decks out of 6. 1 deck left. I was able to bet. My table max was 5K times 2 hands. Last round, I was able to spread to 3 hands of, whatever, that kind of thing. And we took all those notes, and then we had our own homegrown blackjack simulator. So this was in the early mid 90s. Computers weren't quite as fast as they were right now, and so we kind of wrote our own that would get us calculate the EV and the standard deviation, the CE, certainty equivalent, And we use those numbers to track our play and also figure out like how much the players would get paid versus the investors.
And what kind of bankroll did the team have when you joined it?
So when I joined it, there was one main team and probably had a couple $1 million, $1 to $2 million bankroll. And then we split up. The team was just getting kind of like too big and too unwieldy, and there was, I think, some personality clashes. So a few months after I joined, we split up, and I went with Semyon and his team, which we called ourselves the Amphibians, and we nicknamed the other team the Reptiles, and that kind of stuck. Although I think we didn't really quite think through the actual. If reptiles didn't really evolve into amphibians or vice versa. So we started that bank with 400,000. So the amphibians started with 400,000, and then over the next couple of years, we grew that to about $1 million or so, and the other team had $1 million or $2 million, and then we got back together again at 2000. When the 1999 to 2000, we all thought like, hey, could be a really big weekend. Let's all just join up our forces, combine our banks, play a giant bankroll, and we did that. And that was a really great feeling having the team just come back together. And in the meantime, there was like 2 or 3 other like splinter teams that had grown, had splintered off of both of our teams, and then ended up coming back. A lot of the players, so it was a really good feeling at the end there. And then, we continued on, and there are actually people from the team that still play. Sometimes they call themselves MIT Blackjack Team, or they're on other teams, and still making money from it. A lot of them, some people still make all their living or most of the living from blackjack. A lot of them have gone on to other businesses and made millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, probably way more money than they ever could dream of from the blackjack. But what they learned from playing blackjack, they're able to apply in business.
So with that kind of bankroll, $1 million, what kind of betting do you guys do?
We usually bet about like 0.1% units. So if we had $1 million bankroll, it would have been like maybe $1,000 betting units on 2 hands. Usually. So we usually would try to play 2 hands when we had an edge. We use a Kelly factor of 0.3 or 0.4 usually for our team. I assume you guys are somewhat familiar with that.
Yeah, a little more like just risk of ruin percentage.
We never really talked about risk of ruin. We effectively had no risk of ruin the way we ran our banks. So we would continually vary how much we were betting based on our bankroll. We also did what we would call mini banks, where we'd say, okay, we're going to have a bank for like 1 month, and we're going to pay the players. We're going to simulate and calculate what our EV and CE is, and pay the players so that they would expect to earn some percentage in the long run. And we'd have spreadsheets or computer programs that would go and analyze it, figure it all out. And it's kind of boring, but I think it's worked really pretty well for most of us. Like, MIT students are kind of geared towards, doing all of those kind of calculations.
They're not just doing the napkin results that I did on my early teams.
Yeah, like we could have just taken the money and like split it up and, half. You get 10%, you get 20%, but instead we did all this extra work, and you got 11%, 19%.
So with that kind of betting, what's like any memorable biggest wins or losses?
Yeah, we had some weekends where we won like 100,000, 200,000, and lost similar amounts. There are times when we would go from like one hand of 25 to 4 hands of 6,000 or something like that. And then of course
pretty big bet spread.
We get kicked out in the next weekend, but that was okay. It was worth it. Yeah. I think so. Like sometimes we were way too aggressive, and we never really worried too much didn't worry as much as we probably should have about getting kicked out of places. But there's always other things to do. So then there's always other casinos that open up, and you can, like if you wait a long enough time, you can go back to those casinos. You probably will get arrested by some of them for trespassing. You probably won't get convicted, but it could be a big hassle. So I would say just try to avoid getting arrested. The other thing, sometimes people come up to me, poker players who are also blackjack players or vice versa, and they ask if I know how they can get back into being allowed to play blackjack at the World Series of Poker. So if you want to play blackjack, play poker at the World Series of Poker, but they've been kicked out because of blackjack. So, that might be a concern of yours. If you also play other games like poker and you want to be able to play, you can probably play poker in a cash game and not a problem. But if you get into a tournament, and there was just a recent story, a case where someone who had been kicked out playing blackjack, I think in Maryland, at one of the Caesars casino there, and he went and played, entered the poker tournament on a slight variation of his name, and he made it to into the money in the World Series, and they banned him in the middle of it, and so that's not pretty for either of them. They recently settled, I think, or they were going to settle, so I don't know how much they settled for, but realize that although you can probably go back and play blackjack, you may or may not get arrested. But if you want to play poker, it's something to think about. Like, once you get kicked out of a place, you probably don't want to go back again if you want to do anything else with them.
So what?
Andy, one time you were world champion at Rochambeau. Have you ever been able to capitalize on that?
Rochambeau is rock, paper, scissors. For those of you who don't know. And yeah, I think we had some friends of mine. I think we just had a Rochambeau tournament with 16 people, and I won that for $100 or something like that each. But there's poker is a lot like Rochambeau in a lot of ways, in that you have to if you can outguess your opponents, their strategy, you can have an advantage. The optimal strategy, of course, in Rochambeau, the theoretical, mathematical optimal, is just play randomly, 1/3 of the time do each, and hopefully don't give away any tells when you're shaking your fist. But
we'll be starting RochambeauApprenticeship.com.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of the similarities between card counting and poker. What would you say are some of those similarities or differences?
Well, they both use cards, usually a 52-card deck. But, obviously card counting in poker is not the same as card counting in blackjack. People have an idea. Well, first of all, with Texas Hold'em, there's nothing to count, really. You have the game that you see on TV, most people see. There's no counting. A 7-card stud, there's a lot of up cards, and they get folded, and you have to remember them. But there, it's more like bridge, in that you got to remember all the cards, and the exact suits can sometimes matter. In poker, in blackjack, it doesn't matter. I would say although I've gone to a lot of poker boot camps, I don't think you can really teach somebody how to be a winning player in a weekend or a week worth of boot camps, whereas I think you can do it in blackjack. You still need a lot of practice, both of them, and there's a lot of blackjack's a lot more mechanical, whereas poker, it depends on your opponent. But in blackjack, it does too. If you want to really have an advantage against the casino, you can't play optimal strategy every single time, because they're going to recognize it and kick you out. If you go there and the count's plus 10, and you split 10s against a 5, that's probably going to get you kicked out the next time you're there, or that time. And I think the first time I got kicked out of a casino was because I split 10s against a 5, and it was justified. But so whereas in poker, you can go ahead and play optimally, and people aren't going to kick you out. People might not want to play with you if you play too well. So that's another thing. You want to be a friendly person. You want to be a person, when you play blackjack, that the casino likes to have around. If you're a jovial person at the table, if you're not sitting there being super serious, the pit boss likes you, your host likes you, that's going to extend the amount of time that you can play. Or maybe the host will tip you off and say, hey, they're going to kick you out, because of this, or I can't give you comps anymore, but you can still play. Sometimes if you're friendly, maybe you should tip a certain amount when you're playing blackjack to get to keep playing. So obviously tipping theoretically is negative EV unless it actually gets you something in the long run.
Yeah, if you can calculate how it's gonna.
Right. Tipping could also be perceived by the casino as you like bribing the dealer. So that's pretty rare that would actually happen, but I've heard of cases that are pretty where they accuse the dealers of colluding with the players, even though there probably wasn't any.
What about the mental aspect, the difference?
Yeah. So in both of them, you want to have a lot of concentration. In blackjack, you don't want to like lose a count in the middle of a shoe. You don't want to make a basic strategy error. You have a lot of the same things in poker. In poker, though, it's a lot of the figuring out like the odds and the math. It's not clear. You always have to make assumptions about your opponents and how they play, what hands they play. Whereas in blackjack, you know how the dealer's always going to play. It's fixed. So you as far as the math goes in blackjack, it's a lot simpler, and you don't even have to know math really to be able to play blackjack, as long as you know the basic strategy and you know a little bit about how to count and how to vary your bet enough with the count, and you make few enough mistakes. I would say both games, though, you don't know if you're making mistakes unless there's somebody there to tell you. In poker, you probably never know if you're playing a really winning game unless you're winning money, because you don't know how your opponents are playing. In blackjack, you can get tested by your friends or your teammates and know that you're playing a positive game. But once you get into casino, you still don't know. Like, we had people on the MIT team that their losses, especially like when we looked at their standard deviations, they just didn't make sense. And they could have been cheating, or they could have just had a big flaw in their game. Or maybe they get to the casino, it's time to put out the big bets, and they got too nervous and they didn't put it out. Or maybe they would just mentally fool themselves into thinking that, well, maybe I'm supposed to bet 5 units, but I think it's really 4, or maybe they forget to count, and instead of betting, instead of the count being plus 15, they forgot, and now it's plus 5. They think it's plus 5, and they don't bet enough. So there's a lot of parallels there. There's a lot of skills that help you a lot. I think probably the biggest one is bankroll management. That knowing, in both games, you never want to go broke, right? Going broke is bad because you can't continue to make your money. It's like losing your tools of your trade, and both of them have a long-term bankroll, right? And you also have your bankroll at the table. If you're in a poker tournament or in a cash game, whatever's at the table, that's what you can bet, or bet what you can win. Or in a poker tournament, once you lose all your chips, you're out. Same thing at the table. Like, you can't buy in for necessarily all the money, all of your bankroll. Even if you had it on you, you could run into currency transaction limits and things like that. So you have to worry about your bankroll. You don't want to go broke. You don't want to be bet. You never want to bet 100% of your bankroll on one hand. Maybe after splitting and doubling, etc., it's okay. But before that, if you're going to bet half your bankroll on one hand, you're going to be giving up a lot of edge on splitting and doubling down.
So I played some poker. I've played a lot of blackjack, and I remember driving home from a casino down $30-something thousand, and it feels awful, but I know I did everything right. I also know the feeling of driving home from a poker game, losing, and saying, I don't know if I should have been playing against that competition, or I don't know if I was playing tight enough, and there's sort of this nagging of, did I play right? Do you experience that?
Yeah, poker is hard because of that, because you can lose, and you have to, really be introspective and really analyze your play. And sometimes you can win a lot and think you're the best player in the world, but if you really looked at your play, you might have just gotten really lucky.
You should have actually won more.
Yeah. So I remember like talking to Phil Ivey after one tournament, and that he won, and like he was kind of like down on himself because he didn't think he played that well. Like he won first, like you can't really do any better, right? But I guess he thought like he should have won an hour earlier or something.
You should have gotten an A++. That's funny.
But always trying to learn, and whatever it is, whether you're playing blackjack or you're playing poker, always trying to learn, always trying to be honest with yourself of the mistakes that you're making. In blackjack, it's usually easy to spot the mistakes, but you can't necessarily spot your own mistakes. In poker, it's really hard to be honest with yourself and admit that the reason you lost is because of how you played, and to take that to the next level and to figure out how to play better so you can win the next time. In blackjack, if you go through a losing streak, I would recommend having a friend go and test you and check you out and make sure that you're playing a good game. There are times we went on losing streaks with the MIT team, and we would occasionally wonder if we're being cheated by the casinos, like they were shorting the deck or adding fives into play, or whether one of our players on our team was stealing from us. And all those things are always possibilities, and you just have to always be honest and try to be honest with yourself. And if the losing is bothering you, you should take a break and do something else for a little while. Change games, go on vacation, spend time with your family, regroup, refocus, practice a little bit. Use that as an opportunity to get better instead of making it worse by doubling down when you're actually not playing well.
That's good advice. So what techniques did you guys use? Was it strictly card counting, big player, spotters?
We mostly focused on card counting, basic card counting, big players, spotters. We also did some shuffle tracking. We would call it NRS, non-random shuffles, and we had some of our own techniques, but we also did cuts, thin cuts, ace tracking, sequence tracking, a variety of different things. We also dabbled a little bit in other games. Chinese poker, we backed some people playing Chinese poker for a little while in the 90s. Slot machines, or you can also move on or have play other games too. Video poker can be beaten.
Anyone know about video poker?
Obviously, sports betting is getting. Sports betting is starting to be legalized in more states, and so I think there's a lot of opportunities there. And I think with sports betting, they're going to start expanding on online gambling in general, poker. Maybe there'll be some blackjack sites. I know people that would play some of the online blackjack sites for their promotions. That can be tricky though, because you never know if you're going to get paid. They might catch on, especially if you have to use multiple new accounts each time to do it. They might catch on eventually and not pay you.
Which techniques did you guys find were the most profitable?
Most consistently profitable was the basic big player. But the most profitable per hour, I think, was when we could do the thin cuts. So most of you probably know. I don't know if you know what cutting is. You're trying to. If you get to see the bottom card, and you can then use that to steer to either to your player or to the dealer, depending on what it is.
How much time would it take to master that skill?
It probably takes about the same amount of time as learning how to card count. One skill is trying to cut consistently, and also you want to know exactly how many cards you cut, so even if it's not that consistent. Some casinos will let you cut thin, like 17 cards, something like that. Other casinos will make you cut at least a deck. and then that's a little bit harder. There's more variation there, and some casinos won't allow it at all. Won't let you cut, or they do a much better job of hiding the back card. They have a cut card and they always put it there. So finding the casinos that with the right rules, and sometimes like the casinos aren't aware of the different techniques and they get really confused and they don't know what you're doing. And I remember once there was they started having these cruise ships to nowhere near Boston, and we started to go on these ships, and we were cutting, and the casino manager knew we were doing something, and instead of banning us, he was just trying to watch us and learn. So he cut off 2 decks or 3 decks or 4 decks from the shoe, and which was good for us because we didn't we only really wanted to play 1 deck, and he was watching us. We also tried something. We tried a tricky thing with craps. Once they would cross over into national waters, they'd have to pay everybody that had their bets out there or cancel it. So we're okay, we're gonna make sure to have our bets out there, so we bet $1,000 or whatever in craps, and then they held the boat in international waters so that they would
slow
finish
it
that
down.
roll.
That's really funny.
So yeah, we did some shuffle tracking where you track a clump, you track a deck of cards or more. Sometimes you take advantage of machines, shuffle machines that were faulty. We would only do things that were legal. So there's always opportunities that you can beat any game in a casino. The only question is whether it's legal and whether it's worth your time. So we didn't, at least things that we didn't think were illegal. I did get arrested in Monte Carlo, and they tried to claim that card counting or team play was illegal. Same thing in Canada. There'd be one cop that says, "Oh, this is illegal," but they'd always let you go. So,
what's your most memorable back off?
My most memorable one was when the first time I got backed off. I think it was the first time. The first time I got arrested anyway was in Monte Carlo, the Principality, and not the casino here, or the former casino here. And so it was me, Semyon Dukac, and another player were there, and we had a whole European vacation trip planned. We flew into London, signed up for the casinos there. This was at the time when you had to actually sign up in advance and then wait a few days. So then we just signed up, cruised over to the continent, and went to Monte Carlo to play. And this is just before the Grand Prix, and they've got the race course set up, and we're playing a little bit, and we got comps for the Grand Prix coming up, and we're winning, and we're doing cuts and counting. So we were doing thin cuts. They didn't care. They didn't try to cat block the back card or anything. And we were up. We're up. I don't know, 10,000 euros, 20,000. Nothing too huge. And then the other person with us, one of the women on the team, she went away for took a break or something. And then we saw her coming back, and they were were escorting her to the back room, and so we knew it was up. And the security and the casino managers came up, but they waited. They were nice enough to wait to the end of the show anyway. Of course, we were waiting there. If it was something like that in Vegas, we might be okay, we're just going to get out of there, right? One of our players is back room. Nothing's gonna really happen or anything, but we're in a foreign country, they got our passport and everything. We're not gonna leave, but we're not gonna leave the shoe early either. She would have been mad if we had just if we had to abandon the shoe just to save a few minutes. But they stopped us. They brought us all in the back room, and I remember there was this mirrored wall. And then all of a sudden, like, this door opened up in front of it. We go in the back room, and they have us, she's there already. All three of us are there. And, we hear them. They get on the phone. And this is in the mid-'90s. So they're like, blah, blah, blah in French. Griffin Investigations, Las Vegas, Nevada. We're like, and they're like, okay, you guys get together in a corner. And they had like a camera up there. And they're like, look, family portrait. And so, and then we're like, we're like, we want to see our ambassador. And, someone walks in and there's like a gun and a badge. We're like, here's your ambassador right now, police investigator, inspector. And then they finally, so we don't know like if they wanted to make an example of us or what. But at one point they said, okay, do you guys have chips? And they all gave me their chips, and I went and they escorted me to the cage. We cashed out. They gave us the cash, and then they said, okay, the cops are here. We're going to escort you out. And it was, like, lined with policemen, like, on the way out of the casino. And outside, there was, like, all his police vehicles just for, like, the three of us. And, like, we're just card counting. I mean, we're cutting, too, I guess. And, they put me and Semyon in the back of a police van and the woman that we were with in, like, a separate cruiser or whatever, and then they're racing along the course of the Grand Prix to the police station, and then we're held there for a few hours, and then they kind of forgot about us. Well, they were interrogating us, and for some reason they wanted to know how we got there, and we had rented a car, and they wanted to. Then I went with the policeman to the car, and he's like ripping up the back and searching for something, and I thought like, oh no, he's gonna plant something on us, right? He's gonna, or like we had stopped in Amsterdam, like maybe whoever rented the car first like had left like some pot in there or something, like, but they didn't find anything, and eventually they let us go. I think Semyon had like something in his wallet that he was afraid about, like a whole list of like all the team members and something, but somehow they didn't find that. Wow. So I guess we got pretty lucky. Then we got an escort to the border, and as soon as we got across the border, we found the nearest payphone and called the guys back in Boston and told them the story. So we made like, I don't know, 20,000 euros or something.
But you made a memory that'll last a lifetime.
A memory that will last a lifetime.
And you never saw the ground.
I never got to see the Grand Prix. Well, we're on the course. We got to ride in it. So, I did go back years later for a poker tournament, and they told the poker tournament director that Matt Savage, who's a friend of mine, like, hey, you got this cheater in your poker tournament. And he's like, yeah, like, who's that? Like, oh, Andy Block. He plays blackjack. He's like, yeah, I know Andy. I don't think card counting is cheating. And they're like, okay, well, it's fine with us. Just tell him, like, not to go play in the casino. He can come to the cocktail party or whatever, but, can't play. And then, I meet them at the cocktail party, and they're like, okay, you can't play anything. And, one guy's like, oh, no, maybe American roulette. No, not even American roulette. So
I know you're involved in some charities. Do you want to share about any of those, or how you got involved with them, or?
Yeah. So one charity that I got involved with, I think I donated to a couple different charities. I was in a poker tournament that was like a celebrity pro event with, and I made it to like the final table with Don Cheadle, and I said, hey, if I win, I'm going to donate, $100,000 to Africa charities, because he was wearing a Darfur Save Darfur sweatshirt or something like that. So I ended up winning, and so I donated some $100,000 to them, and I've been involved in charity events. Most of the poker tournaments, at least outside of a few in the World Series that I play nowadays, are charity events of one kind or another. Yeah.
And do you play much poker these days?
I I haven't been playing a lot lately because I have a couple of young kids, and
Some things are more important than.
it's a little bit more important. It's hard to play poker tournaments when you have kids, especially like when your wife is pregnant, and you can't really play in a poker tournament. And then if she goes into labor,
Just hold it.
you know,
Just
if-
wait a few
it's
hours.
one thing, you know, if you're in the middle of a shoe and you want to play to the end of a shoe. It's another that you can probably finish, and then still get home and take her to the hospital. But you know, when you're in the poker tournament, yeah.
And I know multiple people told me that your DVD on blackjack got them started, right? Spartan, is that correct? And another guy.
First pro that I've encountered, and I learned through yours.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, and you know the hot shoe.
Yeah, it's the Hot
Yeah.
Shoes, a great documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen that. So you had a copy.
So
over
when
there.
I was
Yeah.
that's my copy. When we were running our team, I think we were about a $200,000 bankroll. We've been playing for about I don't know, almost a year, just like 20, 30 hours a week, and just isolated. Like four of us just didn't know other card carriers. We got a copy of that. And it was like it's movie night, and we all got together one person's house, and it was it was like, and Tommy, you're in that.
yeah.
Stanford Wong is in it. It's just like such a blast.
I
But
think Peter Griffin was in it, or no, not Peter. Who else is it?
it's been a while since I watched
He
it.
might have been in
I
it.
gotta watch that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like at one point your face was actually like uncensored, and
Yeah.
when we saw you. Was that
Yeah.
like a mistake? Because everyone
No,
else.
in
usually
the
had-
beginning, I think. Well, it took him like several years to make it,
Oh, yeah.
and then another year or two to finish producing it and distribute it, and you know he went to a couple of festivals and showed it there. So at first I didn't want my face on there, I think, and then like later on the next time he interviewed me. I think once we were in Vegas and we did like the in casino stuff, then I was more willing to have my face on camera.
Yeah. So yeah, for us it was like, oh my gosh, they're doing what we do.
Yeah.
And just I don't know that connection. But thanks for making that DVD. I know it's been helpful for a lot of people. At this point, honestly, if you're okay with it, can we open up to a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Yeah, just going back to the shuffle tracking. So I don't know how connected you are, like how with other people. I don't know if you're active with that, but or if you hear like how today's climate is in terms of that. But I'm just curious, like right now, there's just they've been switching a lot to the the automatic shuffle machines more and more. But even if they do have a non-random hand shuffle, they're getting a lot more and more complex. It's very hard to find like a one-pass riffle and restack, and it's more like you're gonna get a lot more two passes and whatever step ladders and things like that. So I'm just curious, when you were active, what it looked like, and maybe whether like your generation had something to do with the fact that there's all these policy changes. If you could, and also I guess my final question is like am I like I feel like with like something that has like up to like 50% contamination, it's just not worth my time to pursue or try to track through that. Am I wrong to be thinking that way, or should I really take the time to like grow the different types of tracks that just as a tool set?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to look into everything at least a little bit.
Yeah,
And
which I have,
but because like sometimes you're gonna find something that you have a big edge at, and then you can really exploit. But you never really know. When we were playing, there weren't very many automatic shuffle machines. They would occasionally come up with one, and it would last a couple of years. Some of them were actually pretty beatable. I think there was like a 3-deck shuffle machine I remember like in the early '90s. It was pretty countable. It was like a continuous shuffle machine, but you knew like it would take a while for like the deck to get back into play. And people would take advantage of them. So sometimes some of these machines you can actually beat just as much or even more. You can take advantage of them. Sometimes the machines are broken or partially broken and they don't shuffle well. So I wouldn't necessarily rule out any machine, but I think they're all getting better. Machines are getting better. They're getting cheaper. So the casinos are putting them in everywhere. But there's, always new casinos and new employees, and sometimes people don't understand why there's certain procedures. Like I don't know if you guys heard about the Phil Ivey case with Baccarat, mini Baccarat. And, they violated so many of their basic procedures in that case for him to go and be able to, him and his partner to be able to beat that game. They actually wanted a shuffle machine because they didn't want the dealer to do what they normally do is when they cut the deck and they spin it around 180 degrees so that to stop exactly what they were doing. All they would have to do is do that. So there's always opportunities. And sometimes the challenge isn't being able to beat the game, is to get the game that, get the casino to offer the game that's beatable.
Gotcha.
Finding the game, getting them to agree to to what you want them to do. And if you're just a small gambler, you're not going to be able to do it. But if you're someone who's betting millions of dollars, you might be able to do it.
I have thought of the fact that like if an ASM like breaks down because they're so used to that,
Right? What
they
do they
might
do?
resort to like a very extremely simple shuffle because they're not trained to
Yeah.
have game protection. So
They,
those events,
and the dealers aren't used to shuffling.
Yeah.
And so even if they have a more complicated shuffle, they might be flashing cards and fumbling cards, bending cards, and then you can have an edge over something like that.
But would you say in general, like back in your days, there was just a lot more simple ones? And
There was a lot of simple
maybe you
ones.
had some-
There were some complicated ones, and you would just not shuffle track on those. I remember like Foxwood had a more challenging shuffle to track, but there was like plenty of other casinos in Vegas and everywhere else that had trackable ones.
Did the MIT team use deviations when they were counting?
Yeah, we did. I think that's something that maybe got us a lot more attention than we needed to. So I normally don't. Wait until people are actually beating the game and having big edge before like teaching the deviations. Like the main deviation is insurance, and so we always would do that. But you'd have to get past a higher level of checkout to do the deviations because if you make a mistake, it's worth more. It's more harmful than what you might gain from it. And also, some will just get you kicked out. Splitting tens will probably, I'm sure now even still, will get you kicked out or get you on their radar and get you in.
Depends
Get
on
you
the
noticed.
casino.
It depends on the casino. It depends on who you are and how. And if you're able to act the right way, like you're just a drunk idiot. I think most casino have employees that know like. If you're splitting tens, you're either an idiot or a card counter, and if you can't convince them that you're an idiot, they're gonna kick you out. So, like in my DVD, there's a scene there I think at the end where, in the middle I said like don't split tens, and at the end I know I'm gonna get kicked out, so I'm just splitting everything. So if you know you're gonna get kicked out and you know you can play the hand there, go ahead and split tens, but realize that might be the last round that you play at that casino.
So in the book, Bringing Down the House is a part of the book that describes Mohegan Sun's opening weekend.
Yeah.
And there's two MIT teams that absolutely crushed them. Effectively, basically just ruining it for card counters up until today. I just wanted to
They're
know-
blaming us for that.
Yeah, were you part of that group?
Yes, yes, I was. So
Do you want to offer an apology to?
I'm so sorry. We won like $300,000-$400,000 in that weekend, and
And you got, yeah.
then I went back during the week, and then the next weekend we all got kicked out. Yep, that is exactly what happened, and it was kind of funny. So there's two teams, the Reptiles and the Amphibians, pretty much. And the Reptiles got down there first, and we're like, oh no, they're going to ruin it for all of us. But then they all decided to leave, like watch football or something. And they just left it open for us. And we're there, like, we're seriously going like from 25 to four hands, those 6,000, because 6,000 was their maximum, I think, And because they were worried about cheaters and dealers making mistakes and stuff like that. And I think that, especially per hour, that was probably our most profitable weekend ever, especially like when you factor in the travel time was only like 2 hours instead of having to fly to Vegas or, anywhere else in the country. So I think we probably ruined it for a while for everyone. They did have some good video poker there for a long time that I played for a long time. I don't think they have it anymore. But they had some video poker that was 99.97% or something.
Pick 'em,
Yes, and I played it a lot, and
you could sell your points for gold coins.
I think I lost my points. I just had so many at the end, I never got rid of it. But so sometimes like they might like not let you play blackjack there, but there might be more profitable things.
Between the reptiles and amphibians, did you guys have the same like call-in signals and
We
whatever way to pass the count?
Yeah, so we had like two different sets of signals. We had some verbal signals for the count from 0 to 20, and then if it was more than 20, we would like use like swear words to say like fucking great or something. Or, that means it was like 28 or something actually. But we started off with like one set of signals, and then we changed our signals. Some of our words we changed because they were just really awkward to say. Like we had bowling be 10, like, and try to work bowling into a casino. Okay, at the Red Rock, you can say, oh, let's go bowling or something. But I remember once we at the table, like one of the new spotters asked the dealer like really loudly, "Is there any bowling around here?" Jeez. So we changed that to a much more common word, very easy word to say. So, but when we got back together for that weekend, we had some people would like join up with the other team, and so we had to go and like agree what our signals were. And then we also had like a bunch of signals. A lot of card counters have them. Were heat. I want to like talk to you. Like heat was always like this. End of session is like this. I want to talk to you or I want to see you or something like that. And then we had like the call-in signals. But the call-in signals were the ones that we would change session by session. So this might have been a call-in, but the next day it would be this, or next day it would be this, or next day it would be this. And so those we would change up. And I know like in the movie or the book or whatever, it kind of made it seem like we always had the same ones, but we didn't.
Does MIT have a team today on campus?
I don't know if they have it on campus. I know there are people that play, and we did have, for a while, we did have our practices on campus, and then for a variety of reasons, we started meeting in people's houses or businesses. Semyon was started a business in Central Square, which is just a mile away from campus, and so we would meet there during the late 90s.
We got time for one or two more questions.
Did Harvard ever have a competing team?
Well, when I was at Harvard, I was playing. I went to Harvard for law school, and I met some of my friends there recruited onto the MIT team. I don't think there may or may not have been a team that called themselves the Harvard team, but not that I know of.
Yeah, you mentioned Monaco or Monte Carlo being arrested outside the U.S. Anywhere else outside the U.S. and why?
Niagara Falls, Canada. I was arrested once.
For what?
For card counting, and I was there, just me and one other guy, and I think they wanted to claim that like team play because I was signaling him. I was the counter and he was the big player, and they wanted to try to argue that was it. But the real reason I think that they arrested us then, and they wouldn't admit this, is they had communication with the border people. So we lost some money, but we had some traveler's checks with us. This is, in the 90s when people actually had traveler's checks and used them. Or we had a check or something that we were going to buy traveler's checks. Whatever it is, we needed some more money. So we went back across the border to the U.S. side to go and cash them. And we got stopped there going on the way back in or something. Yeah, pretty sure it was on the way back in, and they, give us some heightened scrutiny, and like, okay, empty your pockets out, and I had a Palm Pilot, so I'm dating this, like it was, Palm Pilots are, big things, they're not very sophisticated, they weren't phones, they could, and they turn it on, and I had like a blackjack strategy chart, and they're like, what's that? I'm like, oh, it's a blackjack chart. And so we think that they were communicating with the casino. So when we got back to the casino, I don't know, my pockets felt a little full, so I'd like empty the Palm Pilot out because I needed space for the chips and stuff. And then we went to play, and then they arrested us, and they thought like we were using a device, and they wanted like to search our pockets and stuff. And at first, like they weren't telling me what was going on, but the other guy, they were like, "Oh, we think you're using a device." And he's like, "You want me to take off my shoes? I'll empty my pockets. Should I drop my pants?" And then they let us go, and then they comped us dinner. But didn't let us play anymore, and we lost money that weekend too. And then on the way back across, they must have told the U.S. Border people too, because even before we got to the, it's just turnstiles, or it used to be anyway. Like it's like you're paying a toll kind of thing, and they asked if you have anything to declare. But even before we got there, a guy was already headed over there to like stop us. And I'm like, "Do we have anything to declare?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got more than $10,000 in cash." They brought us in. They like kind of interrogated us a little bit. I happen to have like an article or something that recently even been published about the MIT team. Eventually, they let us go and without a problem. But so do be careful if you are crossing international borders. The law is if you have more than $10,000 in cash, and casino chips may or may not count as to that limit. You don't do know what those traveler's checks anymore, but those would count towards that limit. And you're supposed to also even declare when you're leaving the country, but there's almost no way to do it. It's really hard to do it. So if you are stopped before getting on a plane and asked about it, you probably want to tell the truth.
Yeah, our team had $117,000 seized at the border
On the way back in?
because they thought they did it right, but you declare leaving the U.S., declare entering Canada, declare leaving Canada, declare re-entering the U.S. They missed that first step.
Right.
So
it's not clear, and there's no easy way, especially when you're driving. They're just waving you through.
Yep.
And then when you're flying, there's been times I've been trying to declare that I have money, and like nobody knows what to do. Like you go to the gate and you're like, "I want to declare this." They're like, "Oh, you got to go back out of the security to the," and then you go there and to the customs, and then the customs people are like, "I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know. I fill this out format or whatever."
Yeah.
So a big pain, and if you do one thing wrong, they're going to try and charge you. They're trying to seize all the money, and they probably won't be able to keep it all. But
Yeah, they fined us $10,000 with no explanation, not even amount. One guy had 60 and the other 50 or whatever it was. It was $5,000 fine each. It wasn't a percent. It's like no explanation, but it's probably still cheaper than a legal fee that we got it.
Yeah, you could have challenged it a little bit.
Yeah, probably should have in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of legal issues, and only a small amount did we ever actually challenge. And we probably should have challenged them way more of them. We've had casinos try to keep our money. There was actually a case in Nevada, Richard Chen versus the Monte Carlo, the Monte Carlo casino this time, where they seized his money, didn't want to pay him. Initially, they kept his buy-in and his winnings, and then they gave the buy-in back. And we took that to the Supreme Court of Nevada, and they said, like, hey, even though he was using a novelty passport, it was a passport from a country that didn't actually exist. So technically, it wasn't illegal to own it and to have it. And even the Supreme Court, as long as you're not using it for an illegal purpose. So he shouldn't have been using it. But the Supreme Court said, like, hey, it's okay to try to hide your identity in order to play the game. Now, if he'd already been kicked out of the casino, that would have been a different story. But he had never actually been. And eventually we won that case, but we didn't get our legal fees back. So it cost us, I don't know, like $5,000 or $10,000 or something in legal fees. But we got the $47,000 or whatever back. And now we have this opinion. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Yep.
Give Andy a round of applause.